episode of Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Roger.
And today we're going to recap the main event of UFC 65, which was Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. And then we're going to preview this weekend's HBO card, which has Adonis Stevenson defending his light heavyweight title versus former champion Tavoris Cloud. And then they have Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. returning in his first fight since he lost to Sergio Martinez against the rugged Brian Vera. So let's start off with the title fight, and I'm going to have Rob break down his feelings.
Okay, so if you watch this fight, this was a championship fight between champion and pound-for-pound king of the UFC and mixed martial arts, Jon Jones, against Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson. Now, this was a great fight. You were in for a treat if you caught it. Jon Jones is the 205-pound champ. He's about 6'4", has a long reach, and is probably one of the most athletic fighters in the UFC right now. And he was up against a guy who Dana White actually thought would be the greatest challenge to Jon Jones at this point. Now, the fight was extremely competitive, but in our eyes, we saw that Jon Jones won most of the rounds, as did the judges. He did great work and really concentrated on kicks to the lead leg, kicks to the body, and kicks up top, while also mixing in elbow strikes to the head of Gustafsson. Now, he did work on his boxing to challenge Gustafsson, who is a better stand-up fighter as far as boxing is concerned. And Gustafsson actually started out as a boxer, then moved to kickboxing, and then mixed martial arts. So we see a champion who is still looking to add variety to his skill set against a guy who does this one thing great and everything else he's pretty good at. Now, the one thing that Gustafsson did have some success against Jon Jones is that he was able to stuff 11 out of 12 takedowns, and also able to take down Jon Jones as well. He's the first man in the UFC and also in Jon Jones' career to take down Jon Jones to the ground, but it did not last long on the ground. Gustafsson could not keep him there as Jones remained active.
Right. And going into this fight, if you watched our last video, we really weren't too enthusiastic about it. We felt that Jones was going to really dominate because of what we had seen from Gustafsson earlier. But it looks like the work, we mentioned that Gustafsson's only loss was to Phil Davis. Now, after that loss, Gustafsson went and trained with Phil Davis and his team. And that really paid off for the last few years. He's been there training, learning how to incorporate wrestling into his game, how to incorporate that into his mainly stand-up boxing game. And it really showed in this match where, as Rob said, he stuffed 11 of 12 of Jon Jones's takedowns. Jones was only successful with one, and that was in the very last round. And then I think he tried for another one in that round, and Gustafsson stuffed it. And another thing with Gustafsson, he took down Jon Jones for the first time in his career, but that was the only takedown that he was successful with. So both guys, once they were able to take the other one down, they knew that it really wasn't their strong suit, so they both went back to the stand-up. And as Rob said, that's where Jon Jones really took over. The thing that is, I guess, maybe controversial about this fight, I saw a lot of things on Facebook where people were saying that maybe Gustafsson was robbed, or that they thought that Jon Jones squeaked out one. They weren't really sure how it went, because Gustafsson outlanded Jon Jones in the punches. His boxing was much better than Jon Jones in this fight. He landed a lot of good jabs, a lot of good right hands, but really that was it. Jones was really working that leg, really working that body, and the headshots that Jones did land were very, very significant. I mean, that elbow was on point. He was throwing it as a lead elbow. He did a few spinning elbows. When he got onto the cage, he threw those clinch elbows. And that is really what separated him from Gustafsson. Gustafsson had his spots where he landed some good punches. He cut Jon Jones with a glancing blow in the first round, and he puffed his lip up later on. Jones really looked worse for wear as far as facial features. Gustafsson had a black eye, but if you look at the end of that fight, Gustafsson could barely stand, and that was from the body work and those leg kicks of Jon Jones. I mean, he never strayed from that plan. He landed kick after unanswered kick on Gustafsson, and every now and then Gustafsson would land a good counter. But I mean, Jon Jones was really working those legs in this fight, and I think this is what won him the fight, because Gustafsson really stuffed all of his takedowns except for the last one in the final round. But I mean, those kicks, he was really throwing that kind of like a jab kick or a side step-in kick to the leg, and that kick is actually the very first kick that I learned when I started taking Wing Chun as an early teenager. And I know that that is a very effective kick to not only stop someone else's kicks, which Jon Jones did. It's more of an offensive defensive move where he's throwing a kick to stop a kick, but he also just threw it as an offensive weapon as well. And Gustafsson had no answer for it at all. He maybe checked or blocked 2 or 3 tops, and then because Jones was going so much to the body and to the legs, he was then able later on in the fight to start landing kicks to the head, which were very, very significant, especially when you're starting to pull away in those championship rounds. The challenger was really starting to show the wear and tear of that body work and those kicks. And then Jones started landing some knees, and he pulled away and did it in a way that the champion should. And so hats off to both of those guys, because they left it all in the octagon and they put on a fight that the fans and the people who appreciate technical skill can both appreciate. So hats off to both of those guys. Anything you want to say in closing, Rob?
Now, with Gustafsson, I do want to point out that he did do a great job with his footwork and utilizing the entire ring to keep Jon Jones off balance.
Yeah, he did make some great angles.
He was able to circle him, and he was never able. He was able to never let Jon Jones fully set with his punching. But I think he was a little shocked at the closing speed with Jon Jones' lead elbows. I mean, he landed several, and they were lightning quick. The only problem with Gustafsson that I did have when he found himself in the inkling of trouble with Jones is that he ran. And we're not talking about, oh, I'm going to use lateral movement. I'm talking about I'm going to turn my back and I'm going to go left or right. That is not good. To me, that is a sign of fatigue. And a fighter, Jon Jones, probably should have took him out. I think he was a little more worse for wear than we thought. But it's a bad signal. And Jon Jones could work on his stand-up a little bit more, his actual boxing. His Muay Thai is great. He was able to land those knees and those elbows. But he's definitely going to have to work on head movement and fully utilizing getting extension on his jab and his right hand, because his possible next opponent is very good at stand-up, and that's Glover Teixeira.
Oh yeah, Glover Teixeira has earned his title shot with his knockout over Ryan Bader. I'm sorry. And let me tell you guys, Glover Teixeira is a problem. Let me say that again. Glover Teixeira is a problem. I think as good as the Gustafsson Jones match was, I say it again, Glover Teixeira is a problem.
If you don't believe us, check out Glover Teixeira versus Ryan Bader and Glover Teixeira versus Rampage Jackson. You'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, let me say that again. Glover Teixeira is a problem. Now, if Jon Jones doesn't work on those things that Rob said, as far as the head movement and fully committed to his 1-2, we might have a new champ. So let's move on. We're going to talk about the HBO card that's happening this Saturday, September 28th. I believe the main event is going to be Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Brian Vera, because that fight's happening on the West Coast. And then we have Adonis Stevenson versus Tavoris Cloud for the light heavyweight championship of the world, which is happening up in Canada. Now, this is going to be a fight for people who like people getting hit in the face, because with all four of these guys, defense is a curse word. These guys' defense leaves a lot to be desired. You're not going to see a Floyd Mayweather type of performance this week. You're going to see guys getting hit in the face a lot. And, you know, for the casual fan, they love that stuff. So if you're a person who doesn't really watch a lot of boxing, this is going to be the card for you, because you're going to see two guys standing toe-to-toe, raining blows on each other, and whoever can withstand the most is going to be the winner. So let's start off with the light heavyweight championship between the former light heavyweight champ Tavoris Cloud and the current light heavyweight champ Adonis Stevenson. These guys are both power punchers. They both look the part of a fighter. I mean, they're heavily muscled. They have that menacing stare in the ring, and they bring it 100%. Now, they might not be technically as good as an Andre Ward or Chad Dawson, who Adonis Stevenson knocked out, by the way, or even a Floyd Mayweather, but they're still very entertaining fighters, because what they do well. Rob, break it down for them.
All right, now Adonis Stevenson is a 35-year-old Canadian fighter. Again, he's a power puncher, and if you haven't checked him out, check out his fight with Chad Dawson.
He didn't go long.
He landed a beautiful counter left punch. If I'm not mistaken, he is a southpaw.
He's a southpaw, yes.
So he ducked under a Chad Dawson right hand and came over and caught Chad Dawson by surprise with probably one of the best knockouts I have seen all year. Now, he's not your consummate boxer, but he's going to bring it every fight. And I expect him to put a lot of pressure on Tavoris Cloud. The thing is, I expect Tavoris Cloud to put just as much pressure, if not more. Now, in the past, Cloud has had trouble with slick or gritty boxers, such as his loss to Bernard Hopkins and his controversial win against Gabriel Campillo. He was winning the fights in the first round, but he was starting to be outboxed. And he's not someone that's going to be, he's not a slick fighter. He's going to stand in your chest and throw as many punches as possible and try to bomb you out. And which
mostly hard left hooks.
So what we haven't seen with Adonis Stevenson is someone who punches just as hard as he does.
Right.
And if he has that, if he does not show up his defense, it's going to be a short night for him. I expect Tavoris Cloud to have a little bit more defense against a fighter like Adonis Stevenson.
Yeah, and one thing to note, that I believe Adonis Stevenson's only loss is by knockout to a journeyman fighter. So his chin is a little suspect, and I don't think Tavoris Cloud has ever been down. I've seen him in a little bit of trouble, but never down. Another thing about this fight, Adonis Stevenson has been working with the trainers in the Kronk gym. Now, we know of the Kronk from Tommy Hitman Hearns and other fighters of that caliber, which means they are very high caliber boxing. That's a very high caliber boxing gym. Vladimir Klitschko also worked out of that gym when he trained with Emmanuel Stewart. Rest in peace to Emmanuel Stewart. But now the trainers who are still there are still teaching that boxing philosophy. And it's going to be interesting to see how much Adonis Stevenson has learned from these guys taken into this fight. So that's going to be what we're looking at, how well his boxing ability has improved, how well he can protect that chin, and if he can get to Cloud before Cloud gets to him. So tune in early and don't look away, because it's going to be a great fight. Now, the next one is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Brian Vera. And like we said, there's not going to be a lot of defense in this fight. If there is the defense, it's going to come from Chavez Jr. He's learned from Freddie Roach. He keeps his hands up, but as far as head movement and maybe angles and feints.
Non-existent.
Yeah. Brian Vera comes forward. He just throws winging punches and just bombs guys out of there. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can catch Chavez Jr., who's shown a very decent chin. I mean, he took a 11.5 round beating from Sergio Martinez and almost knocked him out in the end of the fight. So Chavez's power is for real. Another thing is going to be, this fight is at 168 pounds. Chavez Jr. has been getting down to 160 for the past few fights, and then weighing in upwards of 180, 190 come fight night. Brian Vera is probably he's a bigger guy for this weight class, but we won't know if he's the naturally bigger man come fight night. That's another thing that's going to be something to watch out for in this fight. Anything you want to add?
Well, it's the size. Chavez Jr., when he was fighting at 160, we don't know if he's going to go back down for another fight at 160, but he's been able to weather the storm against middleweight fighters. Now, because he's fighting at 168, it's closer to his natural weight, but we don't know how much he's going to hydrate up. We're not sure if he has Alex Ariza, who is the strength and conditioning coach that he normally had in his camp. If he's not there, it's going to be interesting to see how much he hydrates up and how comfortable he is. He will get down to about 160, but come fight night, you're looking at about a 20-pound gain. So he's fighting about 2 divisions higher than middleweight. Now, at this point, actually 3, because he's at the cruiserweight weight.
Yeah.
He's fighting at 168, so he may not have to cut as much weight, and he may not hydrate as much, so it may be easy to carry. But we will see where his conditioning, that has always been his issue. But he's always been able to impose his will on other fighters, such as Andy Lee, and even catching up to Sergio Martinez. And we'll just see how it goes from there. He still has the legend, his father, Julio Cesar Chavez, in his corner, as well as Freddie Roach.
Right. So tune in, guys. Those are going to be 2 great fights. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. That's going to be it for us today. We're going to have some more videos coming for you later on this week. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, because we love to, be seen. Go figure. And subscribe to our YouTube page so you get all of our updates. Even check out our past videos just to check out some ones that you haven't seen, some fights that you might want to catch up on, and things to look out for in the future. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick rhyme, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.